As someone who's been unqualified for every leadership job he's ever gotten, let me tell you how I nailed the interviews to get in the door. As we're going through the niceties or whatever, I ask a couple of questions of like light discovery to understand what's frustrating them about the team, what's happening, what challenges they have. I make a mental note then to change the general theme I want to come across in the interview, meaning like if they're like, we have a strategy problem, I'm not going to be like tactics. And if they're like, we have a tactics problem, I'm not going to say strategy. Every answer, I answer with a framework. So I won't just say like, here's what my thoughts are on culture. I will say when it comes to culture, I believe there's 3 things that are really important. And this is true for any organization I go to. And I'll talk through those frameworks. Then I will give an example. The reason you do that is because they don't know if what you've done at the last company, you can do at their company. Whereas if you were to say, here's a framework I generally use, you can say, okay, that framework works at any company. And so whatever they did at the last company does work here because he has a framework for it. And I end every call with pretty much these same 2 things. One, I try to ask a question that would indicate I know a little bit more about their team or their company or being a new manager. So I'll say something like, hey, if you were to bring someone new on the team, is your top rep, who probably is responsible for so much of your revenue, going to push back on that kind of person? And if so, why? Then the second thing I do, which is probably the most important thing, you spend a minute and 10 seconds, hopefully you're still here, but I say to them, hey, let's say this wasn't the right fit, and you actually had to write me a nice email saying, hey, it didn't work out. What are the 2 or 3 pieces of feedback you'd be giving me to say why it wasn't the right fit for you at that moment? And then based on that, I'll either try to overcome that objection, let's say in the moment by saying like, do you mind if I talk to that? Or I'll drop that in an email afterwards. Also, typically in the email afterwards, I might include a file that I've done in the past to show them like, hey, here's an example of how I've done scenario building or whatever it is.